the Avranches bottleneck, in the last days of July 1944, German observation posts count American vehicles crossing the bridge at the base of the Cotentin Peninsula. The trucks and armor move nose to tail, hour after hour, and the column does not thin. By August 1st, the town has fallen, and the road east into France stands open behind it. No German formation on that stretch of front has the strength left to close it. At La Roche-Guyon, the chateau serving as headquarters for the German commander in the west, Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge reads the reports coming up from Avranches. He has held this command only since July, handed to him after his predecessor was dismissed for defeatism, and handed Army Group B as well 2 weeks later, after a British fighter put machine gun fire through Rommel's staff car. Men under him still call him Der Kluge Hans, Clever Hans, for the caution that built his reputation. That caution is the one thing he cannot afford to show now. On August 2nd, a directive reaches him from Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia. Fearing the loss of the U-boat pens on the French coast, Hitler orders an immediate counterattack between Mortain and Avranches. A single armored thrust to the sea, severing the American breakout at its narrowest point and cutting off Patton's Third Army, already pouring into Brittany from its own supply lines. Von Kluge studies the map and sees a different picture. He tells Berlin there is little chance of success. He recommends pulling back to the Seine instead, pivoting on the defenses still intact south of Caen, a retreat, not an attack. Hitler does not answer the argument. He sends General Walter Warlimont, Deputy Chief of Staff at OKW, to von Kluge's own headquarters, not to advise him, but to watch him carry out an order he has already rejected. On August 4th, the order becomes absolute. Hitler demands 8 of the 9 panzer divisions still in Normandy for the attack, plus the Luftwaffe's entire fighter reserve, roughly 1,000 aircraft, held back for exactly this kind of moment. "We must strike like lightning," he tells von Kluge. "Reach the sea, and the American spearheads are finished." Von Kluge has 3 conditions to meet before Berlin will call the attack real. He must believe in it. He must find the armor to make it possible, and he must achieve surprise. He does not believe in it. He starts pulling tanks anyway, out of the line east of Mortain, out of the sector facing the British and Canadians around Caen, out of every place that can least afford to lose them. Each division ordered west is a division no longer defending somewhere else, and the men left behind in those thinned-out positions have no way of knowing what has just been taken from them. The plan Hitler has approved calls for 4 panzer divisions in the first wave, the 2nd and 116th Panzer, and the 1st and 2nd SS Panzer. Together they can field perhaps 300 tanks and assault guns, far short of the 8 divisions Hitler demanded. But the most von Kluge and 7th Army commander Paul Hauser can pull together and still call it an army. Hauser will lead it. He has fought this war believing in exactly this kind of stroke: concentrated armor, driven hard, breaking an enemy at his weakest seam. Nothing in his experience tells him this seam is any different. Other commanders, closer to the ground at Mortain, do not share that confidence. They see the roads, the terrain, the thinness of what is being asked to punch through a defended American line and keep going another 20 miles to the coast. They say so. Hitler's answer does not change. For the attack to work, it must move at night, without the artillery preparation that would normally open such a strike. The one advantage left to trade for the strength they don't have is silence. By the night of August 6th, the divisions chosen for Operation Ludic are still moving toward their assembly areas in the dark, gathering fuel, gathering tanks pulled that same week from other fronts, with barely hours left before the attack is due to open in the last hours of darkness. 5 days after Avranches fell, The force meant to close that road back up is not yet fully in position to try below Mortagne. In the dark hour before dawn on August 7th, engines start turning over across 3 assembly areas at once, and none of them are covered by artillery fire. That silence is deliberate. A barrage would warn the Americans exactly where the blow is coming. Without it, the 4 panzer divisions moving into position have only the fog and the dark to hide inside. It is the one advantage Hitler let them keep. Behind the 3 assembly areas sit the tanks pulled all week from fronts that could not spare them. Fuel already burned, moving them into place. Before a single round has been fired in anger, at 2 in the morning, the attack opens against the U.S. 30th Infantry Division, commanded by Major General Leland Hobbs, a division that has held this ground for barely a week and does not yet know how much of the German army has just turned to face it. On the northern arm of the attack, General Heinrich von Luttwitz's 2nd Panzer Division finds a seam and drives straight through it. By the time there is enough gray light to see the road signs, his tanks have crossed 15 kilometers of ground that was firmly German the night before, reaching Le Mesnil-Tauvet and pushing on toward Le Mesnil-Adelais. 15 kilometers in one night against a defense that was supposed to hold. It should be the proof the whole operation needed. Instead, it exposes the flank. Luttwitz is now leading with, because next to him, the 116th Panzer Division has not moved at all. Its commander, Gerhard von Schwerin, believes this attack cannot succeed and has decided on his own account that he will not spend his tanks proving it. He gives no order to advance. Von Funk, commanding the corps, reports by 10 that night that von Schwerin has, in his words, made a mess of things. A judgment that arrives too late to close the gap it describes. In the center, the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte is already 12 hours behind schedule, after a British Typhoon shot down the evening before crashed directly into the lead tank of its column, blocking the only lane forward until well into the morning of the 6th. South of the road, the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich has no such delay. It drives straight into Mortagne, pushes through the town, and closes around 2 companies of the 120th Infantry Regiment, holding the high ground east of it, cut off, by first light, from everyone but each other. On that hill, roughly 700 men now hold a perimeter with whatever weapons they carried up it. Lieutenant Ralph Curley, commanding one of the rifle companies, later describes a German assault that sounds, by the noise alone, far larger than the platoon actually making it. Down at the base of the slope, a telephone switchboard operator named Private Joe Shipley, a man who has never fired a bazooka in his life, picks one up when a German tank closes to within sight of the command post and puts a round into it without leaving where he is sitting. One shot, one tank, one man who had no reason to know how. At the road junction below the hill, Captain Reynold Erickson sends a platoon under Lieutenant Tom Andrews to hold the crossroads at La Baie Blanche. Anti-tank guns, mortars, and machine guns dug in across the only route the German column can use to keep moving west. Colonel Hammond Burks, commanding the regiment from below, cannot reach the men on the hill by radio and does not yet know whether the position has held through the night or simply stopped answering. At La Roche-Guyon, the first reports reaching von Klug describe exactly what he'd hoped for: a breakthrough, ground gained, an American division under real pressure for the first time in weeks. What he cannot see from those reports is what has already happened 200 miles away, before his own tanks ever moved. On August 6th, the 2nd Panzer Division breaks its own radio silence to request night fighter cover for the attack, and a second message from Das Reich specifies the hour, 8 in the evening, and the target, Mortain, with Luftwaffe bombers requested to suppress the American guns. Bletchley Park has both messages decoded before the attack begins. The warning reaches Omar Bradley's headquarters with enough time that by 4 in the morning on the 7th, his staff are already arranging fighter cover from the U.S. 9th Air Force and the RAF before a single American unit at Mortain has called for help. The Germans do not know this. Von Kluge does not know this. Every mile Luttwitz gains north of Mortain, every hour the men on the hill hold out, is being measured against a plan the other side has already read. The fog that is hiding the German columns will not last past sunrise. Every division still moving through it is moving on borrowed time. It does not know it's spending. And when it lifts, everything that made this attack survivable disappears with it. The fog over Mortain does not lift so much as give up, thinning through the morning until, by noon on August 7th, 4 German panzer divisions stand exposed on open ground in full daylight. Overhead, the Luftwaffe was supposed to be waiting for exactly this moment. Nearly 300 fighters gathered from airfields as far as Paris promised to Hauser's men as cover the instant the weather broke. Almost none of them arrive. Allied fighters are already over the German airfields around Chartres before the German squadrons can even take off. And the few that slip through are intercepted well short of the battle, the closest reaching only as far as Couterne, 40 miles from the tanks they were meant to protect. Above Mortain, the sky belongs entirely to the other side. At the crossroads called La Baie Blanche, the platoon Captain Erickson sent forward the night before is still holding. 66 men with bazookas, a handful of anti-tank guns, and nothing else standing between an SS regiment and the road it needs. By the time the fighting there quiets, more than 60 German vehicles sit wrecked along that single stretch of road. An entire regiment has been stopped at a crossroads by a platoon that was never meant to hold it alone. Rocket-firing Hawker Typhoons of the RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force fly more than 300 sorties before the day is out, working the roads east of the town where the German columns are strung out and cannot get off them. A pilot's report that afternoon calls it the largest concentration of enemy armor anyone has seen since the invasion began. By dusk, RAF pilots alone will claim roughly 90 tanks destroyed and American P-47s several dozen more. Figures the pilots believe in the moment, and that a British study after the war will find hard to fully confirm. Whether every rocket finds its target matters less than what the attacks are doing to the men inside the tanks. Post-war study finds many panzer crews abandoning vehicles that were never actually hit, unwilling to stay inside armor that fire could turn into a furnace. A tank does not have to be destroyed to be taken out of the battle. It only has to be abandoned. At 3:20 in the afternoon, a message reaches 7th Army headquarters. The Leibstandartes attack has been brought to a complete stop 2 kilometers east of a village called Jouvigny. Halted by aircraft its own commander cannot see coming. Dwight Eisenhower will later credit the Typhoons alone with what happens next, crediting the rocket-firing aircraft, in his own words, with smashing the enemy's spearhead. Von Kluge's own chief of staff, Hans Speidel, will say much the same after the war, that the armored attack was undone by Allied air power almost alone, tied to a ground reporting system the Germans had no answer for. Neither man is describing the same battle from the same side, and both are describing the same result. On the hill east of Mortain, the surrounded battalion of the 120th Infantry has now been under direct fire for most of a full day, and shows no sign of asking to be relieved. Ammunition brought up the slope the first night is already running low, and the wounded have nowhere to go. Colonel Hammond Burks still cannot reach them by radio. At La Roche-Guyon, von Kluge receives Hitler's answer to the day's reports. Not permission to disengage, but disappointment that the attack was not launched a full day later, when the reinforcements now arriving might have made a difference. The order that comes with it is to renew the offensive, not end it. Every division still committed at Mortain is a division Hitler will not release, even as, 70 miles to the east, a hole in the German line is opening that no one at Mortain is defending. Omar Bradley already sees more in this than a defense that is holding. To a visiting official from Washington, he calls it an opportunity that comes to a commander not more than once in a century. The whole of 2 German armies, pinned by their own attack, with room opening up behind them. No German commander is yet describing the battle in those terms. Lieutenant General Wade Hayslip's 15th Corps, spearheading Patton's 3rd Army, meets almost nothing standing in front of it. On August 8th, it takes Le Mans, a road junction the Germans have no force left to hold, because every tank that might have held it went west, toward a coastline the attack was never going to reach. Patton's other divisions are already turning north. Von Kluge's staff know the Americans are moving fast to the east. What they do not yet grasp is which direction that speed is about to bend. Because a corps racing unopposed through open country is no longer just exploiting a gap, it is closing one. North of Mortain, Canadian and British divisions are already forming for a push of their own, toward a town called Falaise that means nothing yet to the men fighting at Mortain, and everything to what comes next. By August 13th, von Kluge has stopped pretending the attack toward Avranches can still succeed, and asks Hitler for permission to call it off. Hitler agrees, reluctantly, and only because the ground east of Mortain has now become more dangerous than the coastline the attack was supposed to reach. There is only one road east still open to the armies von Kluge now needs to save. It runs through 2 small towns, Trun and Chambois, neither of them wide enough to move more than 1 column of vehicles at a time, a bottleneck that will decide how much of Army Group B gets out and how much does not. That same afternoon, Hayslip's 15th Corps reaches high ground above Argentan, close enough to see the town, with orders to keep pushing north until it links hands with the Canadians coming down from Falaise. Bradley stops him. Wary of American and Canadian forces colliding in the dark, and unsure his own troops can hold a line stretched 40 miles if they keep going, Bradley orders Hayslip to halt short of Argentan and dig in rather than close the gap himself. Patton argues. Bradley does not move. Around the same hours, a decrypted German message reaches Bradley's headquarters, warning that the enemy intends to strike Hayslip's exposed left flank. The same kind of warning that reached him before Mortain ever opened. And one more reason, alongside the boundary with Montgomery's army group, that he is not willing to let the 15th Corps run any further north than it already has. It is the same corps that took Le Mans without a fight, now standing still in front of the one town that could seal shut the only road the German armies have left. And for 3 days, it does not advance another mile. Between the halted Americans and the still advancing Canadians, the gap measures barely 25 miles, narrow enough that a single determined push from either side could close it in a day, and wide enough that, for now, everything still moving east through it gets through. Into that gap, the same divisions that broke themselves against Mortain are now the ones holding it open. The 116th Panzer, pulled off the Mortain front days earlier for exactly this attack, arrives at Argentan just ahead of the Americans and digs in to block them. Elements of the 1st and 2nd SS Panzer do the same. The force massed to punch through the American line is now the only thing keeping a German army from being sealed inside one. Von Kluge sees what this means before most of his own staff do, and understands that unless this corridor east stays open, everything still inside it, 7 corps worth of men and equipment, has nowhere left to go. On August 15th, driving to inspect the collapsing front near Nessie, his radio vehicle is destroyed in an Allied air raid, and for several hours, no one at his own headquarters can reach him. Hitler receives the silence as an answer to a question he had already been asking. Convinced von Kluge has used the gap in communication to open secret talks with the Allies, Hitler orders him to break contact and report back immediately the moment he resurfaces. Von Kluge has no explanation that will satisfy a man who has already decided what happened. 2 days later, on August 17th, Field Marshal Walter Model arrives at von Kluge's headquarters, unannounced, carrying a personal note from Hitler. Model has built a reputation on the Eastern Front for showing up exactly where a line is collapsing and holding it by force of will alone. A general Hitler trusts precisely because he has never once suggested retreat. He has come now to relieve von Kluge of every command he holds. Von Kluge is ordered back to Berlin to explain himself in person. That same night, the German 7th Army begins quietly disengaging from the western edge of the pocket, pulling back toward the one narrowing corridor still open near Troon and Chambois. A withdrawal Model inherits rather than orders, already underway before he has finished reading himself into the command. At Falaise itself, the Canadians and the Polish 1st Armored Division finally take the town on August 16th. 3 days after Bradley's halt order, the northern jaw closing just as the southern one stands still. 7 German corps are now inside a pocket that both jaws are reaching for, and neither has yet closed. Von Kluge leaves for Berlin, having spent his last days in command, watching the armor he massed for Luttich become the wall holding a trap shut around his own men, rather than the spearhead that was supposed to break the Americans in two. Before he goes, he hands Model the situation maps himself, rather than leaving them for a staff officer to explain. The one act of his last day in command that no order required. He does not yet know whether he will be believed, arrested, or simply left to guess. Von Kluge's staff car pulls out of Army Group B's headquarters on August 18th, bound for Berlin and a meeting with Hitler that he does not expect to survive. He tells the driver to take a different road, toward Metz, and somewhere along it, in the back seat, he opens a vial of potassium cyanide. He is dead before the car reaches the city. On August 19th, 1944, the same day, 200 miles away, that Canadian and Polish tanks finally shake hands with American and French troops in the ruins of Chambois. Neither event causes the other. Both simply happen, on the same day, to the same war. At Chambois, the link-up does not close the trap so much as narrow it to a single crossing point, a footbridge over the Dives at Saint-Lambert, and a ford 2 miles south at Moissy, both jammed with more vehicles and men than either can carry. Survivors and locals alike will come to call that stretch of road the Corridor of Death. Above it, on a ridge the Poles have named the Mace, General Stanislaw Maczek's 1st Armored Division holds a hilltop directly over the last open route east, cut off from resupply, running low on ammunition for 3 days. German units still inside the pocket throw everything they have left at that hill, because it is the only thing still standing between them and the roads home. By the second day, the Poles are guarding close to 800 prisoners with almost no ammunition left to guard them with, and calling in artillery on their own perimeter to keep from being overrun. The hill does not fall. By August 21st, the fighting inside the pocket has stopped, because there is almost nothing left inside it to keep fighting with. Paul Hauser, who led the attack out of Mortain 2 weeks earlier, believing in exactly this kind of stroke, is shot through the jaw trying to fight his own army out of the trap it became, and escapes the pocket clinging to the back of one of the last tanks to make it through. What the Allies find when they walk the ground afterward does not need much narration. Roads are blocked for miles with burned-out tanks, dead horses still in their traces, and vehicles abandoned nose to tail exactly as they had once advanced. Official U.S. Army accounts put German losses at roughly 10,000 killed and 50,000 captured inside the pocket. With an unknown number, estimates range from 20,000 to far higher, slipping through before it fully closed. Other historians, working from different records, have argued for numbers well beyond that on both sides of the ledger. No one has ever fully reconciled the count, and no one now is likely to. Left behind on the roads are several hundred tanks and roughly 2,500 other vehicles, the armor and transport of 2 German field armies, abandoned because there was no fuel left to move them and no time left to try. Set against those numbers is a single sheet of paper, found among Hitler's things after the war, von Kluge's last letter, in which he tells his Führer to make peace and to find in himself the greatness that will be needed to put an end to a hopeless struggle. Hitler reads it without comment, hands it to his deputy, and denies its author a soldier's funeral. 19 days earlier, German officers watching the bridge at Avranches counted an American column that would not stop moving, hour after hour, and could not yet see where all of it was going. It was going, in the end, exactly there. Through Le Mans, through Argentan, up past a hill called the Mace, to a 4-mile stretch of road between 2 villages most of those officers had never heard of. The attack Hitler ordered to sever that column at its source is the same attack that pulled the panzer divisions out of the positions guarding the rest of the front. The gap those divisions left behind is the gap the Americans and Canadians drove through to close around them. Historians still argue over whether Bradley's decision to halt short of Argentan let tens of thousands of Germans escape who should not have. That argument has never been settled, and the record does not settle it here. What is settled is smaller, and does not need a historian to see it. A single road, a single crossing point, and a force that was strong enough to attack in one direction, and never strong enough to defend in every other one at once. The hill the Poles held is still there. A memorial stands on it now, looking down over the same valley the corridor of death once ran through. A quiet field, on most days, that 80 years ago was the last road out.